All right. Well, it's time, so we'll go ahead and get started. Hello everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar today. Today, our topic will be regarding the SAP ODP note and how, with Theobald software, you can stay SAP compliant with third-party extractors, such as the tools we provide. My name is Tyler Reynolds. I'm a sales director here for Theobald Software, representing our team based here in the US in Seattle. And today I'm joined by Brian Smoot. Hello, Brian. Would you like to give a quick intro of yourself?
Hey, Tyler. Hey, everyone. My name is Brian Smoot II. I'm a technical account manager with Theobald Software. Been here for just going on 2 years. Coming from a SAP ABAP development background, so happy to be here to showcase this webinar with you today, Tyler.
Great. Thank you, Brian. And so what we'll talk about today is we'll just give a brief intro of Theobald Software and who we are, just for those of you who might not be familiar with us already. And then we'll just dive right in and talk about the SAP note that has to do with ODP connectivity. This is a very, very relevant topic and very important topic. In fact, Brian and I just got back from an SAP user conference last week at SAP Insider, and we've probably heard from close to a dozen or so people stopping by our booth asking about this, specifically about this topic. So we know it's important. We know it's not clear for a lot of SAP customers, and so we are happy to talk about that today and show our solutions for that note. And then at the end, we'll show a little bit of a live demo of how our tools, specifically our Xtract Universal tool, can be utilized to still achieve third-party data extraction, yet being SAP compliant. If you do have any questions during the session, please feel free to either go ahead and post those in the Q&A section, and we'll get to those if possible. We'll get to those during the presentation. Otherwise, we'll go through those at the end, and we'll of course provide a few minutes at the end of the session to address any questions. Okay. So with that said, just a real quick overview about who we are at Theobald Software. So we are, you can think of us as SAP data integrators, data extractors, and we've been in the market for 20 years, over 20 years now. And in that time, we've always focused on getting into SAP data and allowing our customers to bring that into outside environments. Whether that is in your preferred cloud, or maybe if you want to go directly into a database solution like Snowflake or SQL, you can really think of us as, like I said, SAP extract and load tools. We'll get into a little bit more specifics about those tools today. Again, we'll be focusing on one called Xtract Universal. But before we do that, let's go ahead and just dive right into the topic for today, which is the SAP note about ODP. So Brian, maybe can you start by overviewing for the audience here exactly what that SAP note is about and what it's in reference to.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. So just to give a quick overview, high level, essentially SAP has restricted the use of RFC-based modules of the ODP, Operational Data Provisioning Framework, an API for data extraction, just in a nutshell. So being able to utilize that framework over RFC will no longer be permitted.
Right, and there's two pieces there that are important, and we'll expand on these later on. But one piece is we're talking about the ODP, Operational Data Provisioning API.
Mm-hmm.
And ODP is basically a one framework that SAP introduced with S4HANA as one you can think of as not necessarily a data source, but a data provider.
Correct.
And another part of that is you mentioned RFC modules, which basically is one way to get to that type of ODP information.
Correct.
Okay, so this note from SAP says if you're connecting to the ODP framework, you're no longer able to use RFC protocol for third-party integrators. So, what is it that they recommend or suggest in its place?
So they're now suggesting that customers use DataSphere for replication, 2 different SAP environments, but just in a nutshell, like you said, as long as it's not over the RFC protocol, it's permitted to do in regards to that open OData service or API.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that is in the note. I mean, we have a little screenshot of the note here. It's probably impossible to read. We can maybe provide a link after the webinar, but within the note, it even clearly states that OData can be used as an API to get to the ODP information.
Yes, but it's going to be very limited, meaning moving forward, there won't be any updates to it. They're not going to improve this interface going forward at all. So it is at risk, as long as you're going over the OData API.
Okay, right. And so basically, in a nutshell, SAP is putting some limitations on how you can get to the ODP framework from outside tools. However, like I said, when we were at the user conference last week, there was still a lot of uncertainty for customers exactly what this meant, what the options were. Like you said, Brian, what we heard directly from customers was, is DataSphere the only option for us?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And right, so that's definitely the recommended way from SAP. Of course, they'd like you to stay in that DataSphere or now BDC framework, but those aren't the only options for you. And today we'll talk about those options for you.
Absolutely. If I can just echo what you said as well, Tyler, from our engagement with customers, as well as just a lot of users coming to our booth, it was very unclear what was specifically compliant or officially supported. So that's why we wanted, again, this is a very timely webinar to be able to expound upon what is permitted, compliant, and what SAP means by the note. It seems like it brought upon more concerns rather than answers. So that's what we're here for.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so, like we just mentioned, there are other options for third-party tools, such as what we provide at Theobald to get to data. That can be using a different interface, going through ODP objects, like we mentioned, rather going through OData instead of RFC. But there are other options that you have to get to the data you need, depending on what the source object is. So Brian, can you tell a little bit about what sort of options that a customer might have with our Xtract tools that are completely aside from the ODP framework?
Yes. So if you have the tool for customers that currently have Xtract for Xtract Universal, I apologize. Within all of these providers, we had these source objects built in one framework, which was ODP. After the note, as we are adhering to the compliance for SAP, we have alternative or a number of components, as you see here, that is listed. We have table specifically for ABAP Core Data Services. You can also access views or information views from that same source or component, which is table, as well as BW objects. If you wanted to go more towards triggered base off of your table for change data capture, that'd be table CDC, as you can see at the very bottom, as well as for BW objects also. And then we have BW cube, delta Q, etc. for other BW objects that you wanted to pull. The difference is that if you're used to our tool, Xtract Universal, specifically if you had it over the RFC module, everything was in one specific component for your liking. All of our components in general can still handle all of these source objects. You just have to go grab it from the other components rather than one.
Yeah, thanks for that, Brian. And just a quick pause here. I see a couple questions coming into the chat. So yes, we've mentioned here that what we'll show today is our Xtract Universal tool. It looks like we have a couple of Xtract IS customers on. So just to verify, yes, the capabilities that we show here today will all be in Xtract IS, available in Xtract IS as well.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what you will see is in Xtract IS also, along with Xtract Universal, is you will see a new ODP component that is specifically for ODP over OData.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. So I think those questions we answered for now. Okay, one more just came in. I'll address this one real quick before we move on. So somebody was asking if these options are as performant as the RFC modules. Maybe Brian, if you want to talk about that, the performance difference between RFC and OData.
So from what we understand, it's not as performant as it will be over the RFC module. We have OData for ODP for that API open to stay compliant. That's why we are giving you these alternative approaches for our other components that will be based over the RFC methodology. But again, it won't be through the ODP framework. Mm-hmm. So again, you'll have the same performance over RFC through these other alternative components specifically, but to stay compliant with SAP's OSS note, we have introduced the OData protocol for ODP, if that answers your question.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And actually the next slides will show this a little bit in the architecture, how it works. But yeah, like Brian said, RFC, using RFC modules is generally going to be more performant than using OData. That's known. So if you are doing large data pulls, that's why these alternative components you see here, it might be to your advantage to utilize these over RFC rather than OData, rather than ODP over OData. But that's a good segue into the next slide, because we'll show exactly how this works from an architectural point of view. So what you see here, this slide, this is sort of the old or previous methodology that SAP is no longer permitting. So this is using ODP data sources and going RFC protocol. So Brian, can you maybe just explain what's happening here in this architecture for the old way of doing this?
Yeah, sure, no problem. We're going to go from left to right. What you see on the left-hand side is your SAP system. Specifically, we can say that the arrow from the left to the right is you pulling the provider or the SAP objects from the provider over into your landing destination, which would be on the very right-hand side, which is red. So how this works is that the way that we went about it before over RFC protocol, we will extract that information, whether it be just a regular data extraction or incremental loads through the ODP framework, trigger it. It will then be directly passed through our tool. We do not save or land the data within our tool. We'll push it towards your destination. So as you can see, this again, specifically to the ODP component, we're pushing it over to either a BI analytics tool, cloud storage, or data warehouse through this RFC protocol.
Right. Okay. So the point here, again, this, if you're familiar with our Xtract tools, this would be Xtract Universal or Xtract IS for those couple of people who asked. But this is the ODP component that we're talking about. Going through an ODP object over RFC. This is the connection between our tool and SAP. Okay, this is what's no longer permitted for third-party integrators such as us. Okay, so now the next couple of slides we'll get into what is permitted and the options that you have with our tool suite. So let's jump down now into, this is now ODP, but going over OData. So Brian, maybe you can just explain what the difference is here.
Very similar to what we just saw. This one specifically is over the OData services. It's going to allow you to consume data provided by any SAP OData service in general. We're extracting that information as Xtract Universal, specifically the ODP over OData services component, extracting that from this ODP framework, and then again, pushing it through. We're not saving or storing that information at all to any BI analytics, cloud storage, or data warehouse platform. This is the permitted way because we're now going over the OData services or protocol through the ODP framework.
Right. So again, you see here between this and the last slide, we're still going through the ODP framework here. Right. That's the component still used in Xtract Universal.
Yes, we are.
That's still the SAP source is the ODP framework over an ODQ server. The difference here is that the connection, how we're querying the data, instead of going through RFC calls, this is now going through an OData connection.
Correct.
And yeah, and that, as stated in the note, is permitted by SAP as an option.
Absolutely.
And just like one of the people asked earlier, OData is that can work for you, especially if you're maybe going for smaller data pulls or delta type pulls, but that might not always be the best route if you're trying to extract large data because of, as mentioned before, the performance issues. And so the next part is getting to data in a different way. So Brian, this example is built on our table component in Xtract Universal. And can maybe you explain what's happening here as compared to what was happening with the ODP component?
Yeah, sure. So here we are permitted. This has nothing to do with table component or grabbing information from tables in regards to this OSS node. So we are permitted to go over RFC protocol to access specific fields, information, views from tables in this way of doing so. Here we have a function module that we recommend. It's a little bit more performant than SAP ones on the side, but we can get into that as we utilize the demonstration today. What we are doing is we are going over the application layer to pull information from this specific table over RFC protocol. As they're extracting this information from your, as you can see on the very bottom, ECC S/4HANA system, we're then pushing over to that destination. This is our Xtract Universal tool, specifically the table component to do so. You have the capability of extracting information from cluster tables, transparent and pool tables, joining transparent tables or related tables, and then again, landing that information to any BI analytics, cloud storage, or data warehouse destination of your choosing.
Right. So like Brian just said, this is still going through RFC. Brian stated we're committed to continuing that approach. That's very important to us because that is how SAP in the past and still does. This is how they prefer third parties to make the connection to sources other than ODP. So we adhere to this. In fact, we have been SAP certified for third-party integrators for many years, and we actually just recertified in December.
Yes.
So yeah, not only is this permitted, but we're actually certified by SAP for this approach. Yeah, and again, RFC is used. The difference here is you can see on the SAP side, we're not utilizing the ODP framework. We're going, in this case, in this one example is a table pull, and in this case, we're going to an application table and pulling directly from a table on the ECC or S/4HANA system.
Correct.
I just saw another question come in about T codes. Yeah, so T code, again, that's just, and Brian will show the tool here, and we'll jump into the Xtract Universal tool here next, actually. But T codes or OBOP reports is one of the components. So one of the components available in our tools. And again, that allows you to query T codes or OBOP reports. Again, also done over RFC. And this is how SAP certifies third-party tools. Okay, and then actually one other question, we'll get to this or Brian will show this in the demo as well, but there's also a question for getting to tables over RFC with Delta. And so Brian can show also how we support change data going through directly through tables rather than ODP objects.
Correct.
All right. So yeah, with that, I'll go ahead and let Brian share his screen, and Brian will show you the Xtract Universal tool and kind of review what we've talked about today and show exactly what that looks like. And again, for those of you asking about Xtract IS, this is all going to it's going to be the same in your Xtract IS environment too. That'll be available to you shortly, but for the demo purpose today, Brian will be using our Xtract Universal tool.
So I'll go ahead and get started. What you see in front of us, Xtract Universal Designer. For the two line items that you see in front of me, that's what we categorize as an extraction in general. All extractions are made up of three things. It's going to be a source where we're pulling from. As you can see here, I have two different separate ones. One source is for ECC or EC5. The other one is going to be for OData. The next thing that we need within this extraction process will be an actual type. So as you can see, we have one type for table CDC, which Tyler just mentioned, how we're going to trigger certain things on tables for change data capture. And then the other one is for this specific webinar for ODP OData. Last but not least, destination. Where are you going to be pushing this to? I'm just going to utilize for this webinar and demonstration purposes just a standard CSV file to showcase that as well. Those three things make up extractions in general. And I'm going to be able to get into, first and foremost, what that looks like for our ODP framework in which we had before. So if I go to EC5 and I label this test and I pull up for ODP, it immediately brings up the ability to go over RFC. Again, this is what we talked about earlier with the OData side of things. So I can change the source to S4 or to EC5 or BW. But again, this is not what is permitted from the OSS node. Just wanted to showcase this, that as we had it before, all of our providers are available here within this one component, as well as these source objects, again, which is no longer permitted. So as we adhere to the way that SAP wants us to do things, I would just press OK to get out of this. Can easily delete this from our UI and then move forward with the permitted way of doing things, which will be through this one that I have, webinar, ODP, for these OData services. So as you can see here, once we bring this up, if I press search, I can easily search what service I want to look for. Specifically, I'm going to use Z for a customer service that I have available. I can utilize any of these services here to move forward. So what I will do is just utilize this one just for the time being. As it loads, it'll give me the availability for delta tracking or change tracking here, which I can validate. And then I can also edit selections for what I want for specific values for each of these materials or fields. So I can choose all fields. I can choose the relevant or respective fields that I want to bring through. And then once I do that, as I have the name, the descriptions, and I can edit these selections, I can then load that preview. We have a bunch of extraction settings as well to limit package sizing as you're moving forward with this general extraction for ODP over OData. You can even implement some runtime parameters if you needed to. And then here's a cool way of understanding and mapping out these subscriptions that we have. If it ever grows out of control or in any way, you can utilize this terminate subscription to stop the tracking on that to move forward. This is what it looks like for the ODP side. Over OData services to be compliant and adhere to this SAP note that Tyler and I are speaking about today.
Hey, Brian, can I ask you a question here?
Sure.
Can you show us maybe a summary of your SAP source connections that you have defined here in
Sure.
Xtract Universal?
So as I go to server and I manage my sources, you can see the sources here that we're pulling from on the SAP side. The best thing about seeing it from this window is that you understand the type. So we have BW, ECC, and S4 all as a RFC type. And then we have the OData services specifically listed here as OData. I would love to drill into this, to the configurations, but just from a security standpoint, can't really expose those endpoints here.
Okay, so the one you showed us briefly that you deleted was using that EC5 and S4H sources, and you can see here those
Yes.
are type RFC.
Mm-hmm.
They were using the OData component and RFC, which is why you no longer wanted to utilize that.
Correct. Just wanted to showcase what it looked like before, where everything was. But again, being able to showcase on the back end that we still have all of those providers available within different tools as well as those source objects.
Okay. And then what you just showed us was the same OData capability. However, that's using this OData source, and the type is no longer RFC, but now you're going through the OData protocol.
Correct.
Great.
Correct.
Perfect. And then that's a summary. That's basically the focusing on ODP objects.
Mm-hmm.
And now, if you can show us some examples for other ways, we mentioned in some earlier slides, there's alternative methods other than just going to the ODP and using an ODP provider. What are some other methods that a customer might have to get to the needed data?
I think just with time, as we are just halfway through, I think it'd be cool to showcase change data capture. Before change data capture, I'll run quickly into just a standard table. So as I utilize this for test, and we're going to go to this table component as we spoke about earlier. With this table component, I can validate pulling information from transparent tables. For this one, it would be a sales document or header data from this table, VBOC. What I can do is add relevant fields that I want to pull into this data. I can count how many rows that will be extracted. Right now, just over 11,000 rows. And if I wanted to fully drill into this also, within this where clause, I can filter down to specifically what I wanted to pull to limit out unwanted data from this extraction pool. As I do that, I can go back to where our tables and fields are. Some tables in SAP are related. So to this header data table, I can also add a table respectively that has the line item data. That'd be VBOP. Easily include this line item data here. I can grab other information that is not available to me in the original table. And then what I can do here is simply create a where clause that limits some of the information being pulled. So I can specifically have a where clause on the date on which record was created. I can make sure that it's either equal to or greater than, let's say, the first of the year of 2020. As we count our rows now, as we can see, we have gone from just over 11,000 rows to now 349 rows because of this filter. I can load that preview just in case I wanted to see it before landing it to my destination. I can create specific runtime parameters while doing this, as well as extraction settings with my row limit, specifically how many rows I want to extract, package size. If it's a large volume of data, I can execute this within packages. Right now, it says the package would be at 50,000. And then also I can validate, as we spoke earlier, going over the RFC protocol, I can validate which function module I want to utilize to perform this. We do advise that specifically for this demonstration with joining these transparent tables, the Theo read table is probably going to be the best one to do so, as it's more performant than any of the standard SAP tables or other custom ones.
Yeah, that's a important point, Brian. So with this table component you see here, large volume polls are going to be are going to work well for you as compared to doing a poll over the OData protocol.
Correct. And that's why we said it's more performant. That's why we've continued to utilize these for other components. But again, just wanted to adhere to the note that SAP released to us. So I can press OK. If I was to run this extraction, I will be good to go to run it and extract that information and send it over to our CSV destination. Specifically, if you are mentioning change data capture, it'd be our tool called Table CDC. As I have one built here now, I can quickly transition into it. Just a couple of things as we take a look at this specific window or dialog screen that has popped up. This is going to be for change data capture. So what we are doing is we are placing a trigger on this specific table, KNA1. And as you can see right here where it says CDC info, the state of this trigger on the table has been initialized, meaning we have run this table. So there was a few steps that I've gone through before we get to this window. The few steps are just running this extraction after building it out to a standard CSV file, which then places an initialization or trigger on the table that we're going to be pulling from. So what this means is that any changes, updates, deletes that happens to this KNA table, KNA1 table from here on out will be specifically showcased within our results as we run this table in the Xtract Universal tool and then send it to destinations. So again, this is initialized within the state for the table KNA1. As you can see for the configuration window, I did not elect to extract the table on the first run. So as I have run this before, it has run for me with 0 rows extracted. As we run it now with this preview, what you should see is that there are going to be 2 rows that are going to be extracted successfully, showcasing changes to 2 different customers. I do see that we have a question. Did you want to jump into the question now, Tyler, or should we just?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and finish up with this part, and then we'll touch on those in just a moment.
Excellent. Just a few things within the fields. Right now I have all fields selected. What that means is that all fields will be brought into my preview window. However, if I was just to select one or two fields, that's what I can immediately see. It does not mean that's not going to be tracked based off the table that we put the trigger on. Just wanted to make sure that was clear as we move forward. So as I press OK and validate, this is the same extraction that we're running, and actually run this extraction, we'll now again see the two successful rows that we talked about. If I look into the output, which is a really cool tool or feature for our tool as well, is that you can see the output that will be sent over to the destination of your choosing. I can scan over and see the two customer numbers here that I've updated. I can specifically see the operation in which what happened to this specific customer. U indicates update, I indicates insert, and D indicates deletion or deleted. So as you can see, I updated these two customer numbers or customer records. Here are the names of the information. And again, this is the information or the fields that I brought in at the table level that I wanted to see. If I brought in all of the fields, you will relatively see all of the fields listed here within this output window.
Yeah, and so basically what happened, Brian, was when you clicked run, it started the query. It found the two records that have changed since the last time you ran this. I mean, in this case, this was all just ad hoc manual to show in the tool, but in practice, our customers would have this automated to run every day, every hour, every 10 minutes. So that you don't have to come in here and click run every single time.
Exactly. As you said, if let's say I just made the changes, 15 minutes later, there aren't any changes. If I was to run the same extraction, it should come up successful again with 0 rows extracted because there have not been any changes since we last run it. And we're doing so on our extraction window for runtime or running this extraction. We do have a couple of options for you in regards to, like you said, automating and triggering these extractions, whether it be through URL or executable.
Okay. Great. So yeah, thanks for a lot for that that demo, Brian, and showing how, again, the point here was to show within our Xtract suite, in this case, Xtract Universal, but also Xtract IS, some of the options you have for getting to different types of data that are not affected by the ODP nodes.
Correct.
So just to sort of recap and summarize again, what we talked about today were basically different options of how you can still use third-party integrators such as Theobald and our Xtract suite, and how to bring your SAP data into outside environments. As Brian just showed in the demo, there's many different types of SAP, data, objects, views, whether that's full table pulls, incremental loads. Somebody asked about reports, even BW objects such as Bex queries, info cubes. So there's a variety of different types of SAP objects. And again, this SAP node really only is relevant for just one, which is the ODP. Okay. And like Brian also showed for ODP, we will now have the option to do that over the OData protocol, which will still be compliant. I did see a question in the chat about the database license for S/4HANA, and you can see here in this bullet point there's no additional licensing, and the reason for that is with our tools going through for the RFC calls, we're going through the application layer. We're not going directly to the database layer. So what that means is basically we're connecting to SAP in the context of an SAP user. And since we're not going directly to the database level, you do not need that HANA database license for S4 HANA platforms. And again, just building off that, I mentioned this before. We were just recertified by SAP for third-party integration. You can see, it might be hard to see on your screen, but that was just updated on December 12th of this past year, which was, of course, since this ODP note has been released. So even with that note existing, we're still certified by SAP for third-party integration. You know, and like we just showed, we're very flexible into the types of data that you can get from SAP, views, you know, objects.
Right.
But yeah, and also we didn't really get too far in the destinations, Brian, but maybe if you just want to highlight some of the different types of destinations or target environments that our customers have an option to send to.
Yeah. So just to name a few, Amazon S3, Redshift, SQL Server, Azure. We have a list of Fabric as well. We have new updates coming in regards to Fabric and mirroring within Fabric as well, OneLake destinations. So just to name a few.
Right. So yeah, again, with being flexible, you know, no matter what cloud environment or if you're going to an on-prem database, we probably have a solution for you.
Another question we got a lot, Tyler, was in regards to our tools. Do we work with RISE with SAP?
Yes, certainly. Again, it shows here on this certification. I don't know if you can see that well on your screens here, but yeah, certified.
I think
on
at the
RISE.
very bottom. Yep.
Yep.
Certified works with RISE.
Yep.
Okay,
So this
validate that also.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the certificate from SAP. We're also found on their certified solutions directory. So if you happen to be on the SAP site, you can find us there as well. Yeah. And then, you know, just to highlight, you know, some of just a few sampling of the customers we have. We actually have worldwide 1,700 active customers who use our tools, are, you know, comfortable and confident using our tools, knowing that they're adhering to not only adhering to the SAP guidelines, but knowing that we're actually we go a step beyond that and are actually certified as third-party integrators. Yeah, customers again worldwide. Through all different industries, so we're not really focused on a certain vertical, but we can be pretty flexible of whatever industry your organization might be in. Okay, so with that, that's the end of our presentation. So we'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. We'll go ahead and I'm just going to quickly go through the Q&A sections just to see if there's any questions we haven't answered yet, or Brian, if you see some in there, feel free to chime in.
No problem.
Yeah, and for the audience, of course, if you still have questions, feel free to keep entering those as we talk through.
So I see one that I could jump into. I see that we already answered. Does this have any impact on the demand of T-code execution?
Right. So we touched on that briefly, but yeah, with our T codes, or that was the report component we showed. So that is, again, that's not related to ODP. Okay, that's making a direct call over RFC directly to the report or T code.
Yep.
Yeah, there's also one I saw on here. Is this a new note? This note isn't new. It's been around, Brian. How long? Over a year now, probably 18
Just
months.
About.
Yeah. It has been updated recently with the announcement of the business data cloud, but
Yep.
Yeah, it's all in reference to an existing note that's been out for some time. And actually, we do have a blog article on this note. If you scan this QR code on the screen here, you can go directly to our blog that, again, talks about what we talked about today, but maybe in some more detailed information. Okay. Okay, there was a question on, so there was a question on loading table data over RFC in Delta mode. And that's what Brian showed with the table CDC components. Yeah, it's tracking changes at the table level. It's all done over the RFC protocol when polling the data. Okay.
Also, this webinar will be recorded, and I believe we will utilize this on our Diebold software page. Correct, Tyler?
Yeah. So it is recorded, and everyone who registered will get an email from us probably early next week with the recording that you can view at any time. Also, in that email we send out with the webinar recording, there will be a button you can click if you want to contact us directly for basically a one-on-one session to talk about any other concerns or questions you might have. Okay. There is a question on the OData, meaning OData through ODP. The interface, the GUI, looked a little different than what you showed before, but eventually you'll still be able to get to the same type of objects. It might just look a little bit different in our tool, just because of the way you have to call and bring the data. Is that correct, Brian?
Yes, you can say that. The data provided by SAP, the OData services, it will be available over OData. If it's not as performant as you would like, or as you've seen through the RFC, again, those same extractors sources will be available through our different components. So you'll be able, like Tyler said, you'll be able to get to the same SAP objects, just in different ways.
Okay. All right, let's. Okay, so.
And a lot of this information will be on our Xtract Universal Help Center that we have. A lot of the stuff that we went through today is documented there, as well as different articles and knowledge bases for you guys to take a look at as well.
Yeah, there is one question specifically on the OData piece, if it requires DataSphere or the, I guess there's a special integration license called Premium Outbound, and both of those are not required. So neither of those would be required to use OData or any of our other components for that. Yeah, DataSphere is not required, and again, like I mentioned before, the special licensing is not required. Okay, and then so somebody's asking about the open mirroring for Fabric. So yeah, like Brian said, we do support Fabric. We support Fabric OneLake as a destination, and now just recently released, we now support Fabric open mirroring. Yeah, so open mirroring is a great feature from Microsoft, especially when you're looking at change data. And so especially with the table CDC component that Brian showed, that in conjunction with Fabric open mirroring is going to be a really robust solution.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and a couple ways to get information on that. Again, if you want to reply to our follow-up email, contact us directly. We also have a webinar specifically on Fabric Open Mirroring that's happening in about 3 weeks, actually. Also, if any of you in attendance happen to be visiting the FabCon conference next week in Vegas, we will be there. We'll be represented there in a booth. So if you will be in Vegas for FabCon next week, please feel free to stop by and say hi to us.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't see any other questions.
I think we've combed through just about everything. I think we just got a new one.
Okay. Okay. Table CDC. Oh, yeah. I think there was a question we skipped over actually on CDS views. So CDS views are one of the views available through ODP, part of the Operational Data Provisioning Framework. We're actually in the process of making this available through the table component.
Correct.
Yep. So for CDS views, we're adding support to make that available again through table and not through the ODP component. I don't know what the timeline is on that, but I know that's something our development team is currently working on. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, with that, again, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I hope that this webinar was interesting for you and provided the type of information you were hoping for. Again, just as a follow-up, in probably early next week, we'll be sending out an email with the webinar recording. And again, that email will have an option to contact us if you have any open questions you still might have, or just if you wanted to talk about your specific use case with us. Feel free to schedule some time. So with that, I would like to say, again, thank you. I appreciate your time and hope you found this interesting.
Thanks again, Tyler. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. Appreciate you.
Right. Mm-hmm. Goodbye.